All right, buckle up, because this is one of those moments that perfectly captures why congressional hearings sometimes feel less like serious job interviews and more like political cage matches with a C-SPAN budget. We've all seen the headline by now. Senator Kennedy shocked by a nominee who called Christians bigots. And honestly, the word shocked is doing some heavy lifting here, but not in the way you might think. This whole exchange taps into a much bigger cultural fight: religion versus modern progressive ideology, free speech versus acceptable speech, and whether people nominated for powerful government roles actually respect the millions of Americans they're supposed to serve. Let's unpack it properly. First things first, who is Senator Kennedy, really? If you've watched even 5 minutes of Senate hearings, you already know Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana is not your average buttoned-up politician. He's got that folksy Southern lawyer energy, where he asks questions like he's genuinely confused, but somehow manages to corner nominees into saying the quiet part out loud. Kennedy's whole shtick is deceptively simple. He speaks plainly. He pretends not to understand elite academic jargon. And he asks questions that force nominees to confront the real-world implications of their beliefs. That's why these moments go viral. He doesn't yell. He doesn't grandstand. He just calmly asks, "Do you really believe that?" and lets the nominee trip over themselves. So when Kennedy appears shocked, it's not fake outrage. It's more like, "I cannot believe you just said that in public, on the record, while applying for a federal job." The nominee and the bigot comment at the heart of this controversy is a nominee who, at some point, either in past writings, statements, social media posts, or advocacy work, characterized certain Christian beliefs as bigoted. Now, let's be clear, this wasn't about fringe extremists or violent radicals. The issue was mainstream Christian beliefs, things like traditional views on marriage, sexuality, or religious doctrine that are shared by millions of Americans and protected under Constitution. That's where the alarm bells start ringing. Because when you label a belief system followed by tens of millions of citizens as bigotry, you're not just criticizing an idea. You're making a moral judgment about the people who hold it. And that's a big deal when you're seeking a federal position. You potentially have influence over policy, enforcement, or regulation. And you're supposed to serve everyone, not just people who agree with you. Kennedy's reaction, not performative, but pointed when Kennedy zeroed in on this comment. You could practically hear the room tighten. He didn't accuse. He didn't insult. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he did what he does best. He asked the nominee to explain themselves. And that's when things got uncomfortable. Because nominees are trained for this. They rehearse. They memorize talking points. They practice evasive language like, "That's been taken out of context. I've evolved since then. I respect all people. I believe in inclusion and tolerance." But Kennedy's follow-ups tend to cut through that fog. He doesn't ask, "Do you regret saying it?" He asks, "Do you still believe it?" And suddenly, the nominee has a problem. Why calling Christians bigots hits a nerve. This isn't just about religion. It's about power. When someone in an activist or academic space calls Christians bigots, it's usually framed as punching up, criticizing a historically dominant group. But once that person is nominated for a position of authority, the power dynamic flips. Now it's not rhetoric. It's policy adjacent. Americans reasonably start asking, will this person treat religious organizations fairly? Will faith-based charities be targeted or sidelined? Will religious exemptions be respected or challenged? Will Christian employees, schools, or groups face bias? That's not paranoia. That's basic accountability. If someone has publicly expressed contempt for a belief system, it's fair to wonder whether they can neutrally enforce laws that protect that system. The nominee's attempted walk back here is where things usually go sideways. Instead of saying something clear like, "I shouldn't have used that word, and I don't believe all Christians are bigots," we often get a word salad. Something like, "I believe that all people deserve dignity, and my comments were about specific policies, not individuals, and I support religious freedom." That sounds nice. It also avoids the actual question. Kennedy, and plenty of Americans watching, aren't confused. They are not asking for a TED Talk on inclusion. They are asking whether the nominee still believes that holding traditional Christian beliefs makes someone morally inferior. And when a nominee can't answer that directly, it speaks volumes. This part is important because critics immediately jump to, so now you can't criticize Christianity. That's not what this is. You can criticize religious institutions, church leadership, political activism by religious groups, theological positions. That's free speech. But there's a line between criticizing ideas and demonizing people. Calling millions of Americans bigots because of sincerely held religious beliefs crosses that line, especially when you're trying to work for a government that promises equal protection under the law. Why this moment resonated with so many viewers, this exchange didn't go viral just because Kennedy asked tough questions. It resonated because it touched on a feeling a lot of people have, but don't always articulate. That certain belief systems are now treated as morally unacceptable in elite spaces. And Christianity, particularly traditional Christianity, often sits right in the crosshairs. People see nominees from elite institutions using academic or activist language to dismiss ordinary Americans as backwards, hateful, or ignorant, and then acting shocked when they are questioned about it. Kennedy, in his own understated way, voiced what many people were thinking. You want power, but you seem to despise the people you'd have power over. The broader pattern in confirmation hearings, this isn't an isolated incident. We've seen similar controversies involving nominees who made extreme social media posts, advocated for ideologically rigid positions, used dehumanizing language toward political or religious groups. And the pattern is always the same. The statement is exposed. The nominee minimizes it. Senators ask if they still believe it. The nominee dodges. The public loses trust. Kennedy just happens to be very good at making Step 3 uncomfortable. Why this matters beyond one nominee, even if this particular nominee is confirmed or rejected, the issue doesn't disappear. This is about the standard we expect from people in government. If calling Christians bigots is acceptable, what about Muslims? What about Jews? What about any group defined by belief rather than ideology? Most people instinctively understand that labeling entire groups as morally defective is dangerous, especially when it comes from people seeking authority. That's why this moment struck such a chord. Let me know what you think about this video in the comment section. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future uploads. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think or what you want to see next.